Welcome to EternalJourney, the podcast.
Greetings to all my knights and padawans out there. You are listening to EternalJourney, the podcast that talks about all things eternal with a focus on limited play. This week's show is episode 79 of the podcast, where we are going to be discussing the dynamics and characteristics and kind of behind the scenes or deep dive into what it is to and when to pivot or potentially audible from your draft deck to something different in the later packs to maximize your draft. We have a special guest with us today, but first, returning my good friends. I really don't know how they keep coming back week after week, but I'm grateful for that. Joining me on the line is John.
Good evening, fellas.
And Alex.
Hello, my friends of Eternal.
I see what you did there, that segue. Well, with that great segue, I want to introduce our special guest on the show, a friend to the entire Eternal community, someone that's put up phenomenal results. In fact, they have more top 8 appearances than I have 7-win drafts, and they're queued for the World Championship. I want to welcome on the show leader of Friends of Eternal, Sunyveil. How you doing, brother?
Hey, Jedi. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on. And you do great work in the Eternal community. So it's great to be, kind of be a part of that for once. I mean, I've definitely seen your stream and respected a lot of things that you do, just as, the tournaments and whatnot. But it's great to be a part of it for once.
Well, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. I'm absolutely honored. I do enjoy your streams, both Eternal and musical, as well as your podcast. That's right. Friends of Eternal is Sunny's podcast, and I gotta say, he has been absolutely murdering it lately with these episodes, so I do encourage you to check those out. We will plug those. Actually, go ahead and plug those now, Sunny, and just in case people don't make it to the end of the show.
Yeah, FEcast is the official podcast of the Friends of Eternal. I make it with Stormblessed, and we often have a guest. We talk about competitive play, so if you're trying to keep up to date with the tournament scene, I think our podcast is one of the best ways to do so. There'll be a link in the description. You can also search FEcast wherever you get your podcast. Should be able to find it.
Also, one thing of note, if you guys are starting to dip your toes into the competitive scene, Sunny makes it a point to release a podcast the week of the tournament, kind of breaking down what he thinks the meta is going to look like, the top decks to play, and or essentially sometimes even the deck he is going to play. So no holds barred, phenomenal resource. Definitely check it out. But okay, got to get through a couple of quick announcements. Once again, you can catch us streaming live every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ, where John and Alex all lurk in there and call me out on all the many punts that I do while drafting, but it's a great place to ask your questions and kind of learn more about this great game of Eternal, or at least have me on the background while you're at work. If you can't catch us live, youtube.com/EternalJourney is where you can find the video version of this podcast, which is really good for our set reviews that we do, as well as various sealed and draft videos. And because of this weekend, my own QCP challenge run, the entire thing is on there, clipped and edited for your viewing pleasure. So definitely check that out, to include a super bomb insane hype train that happened this weekend. With that will lead us into our shout out section. So I want to thank Blastardissimo kicking off that hype train, Extinction, Try and Kill Me, Titus and Blossom, John Holio, Batteries, Marvin the Imp, Captain Team Bro, the Jim Joe, Martholorax, and Mercurial Blue, all of you donating both bits and gifting subs to make the hype train absolutely insane. We hit level 5 within, I think, a minute, and I think we finished the hype train off at 687% or something crazy like that of level 5. So you guys absolutely murdered it. Thank you guys so much for all that ongoing support, and welcome to the Jedi Order. We love having you guys, and it's why we continue to do this great content. I want to give a shout out to our friend that came on the show last week. That's right, Batteries managed to take down the Summer QCP Challenge with yet another Rats deck, this time in the Throne variety. Managed to slug through, went into day 2. I don't remember what position he came into, but won all his matches and ended up taking the entire thing down. So congratulations to him. And then, of course, if you want a more in-depth look at that deck, you can check it out on Eternal Warcry. Or if you want a breakdown of the Expedition version, check out last week's show where he did do that for a Constructed Corner. We will give a shout out to IP Long, though, later on, that came in second place, a finalist in the tournament, which was extremely impressive. We will be breaking down his deck later on today on the show. All right, guys, that is going to do it, which means it is time for our Pack 1 Pick 1. Sunny, are you ready for this?
Oh, I am so ready. I love drafting.
Outstanding. So because you are a guest, I'll give you the entire pack and you can tell us what cards you're looking at and then ultimately what card you will pick. And then hopefully John and Alex can pick up the slack for me and fill in any potential gaps. So starting off with this, we have Caravan Guard, a 3/5 soldier for 3 justice. Caravan Guard can't attack unless you have 5 justice influence. Silverblade Reaper is a 1/1 Nightmare Valkyrie for 3 shadow, flying, and deadly. Spellbound Ursine is a 3/3 bear for 5 primal, overwhelm, and imbue. Noble Protector is a 1/2 soldier for 1 justice, entomb, gain 2 armor. Blur Haze Worm is a 1/1 worm for 4 time, imbue. Then ultimate, when you play a card on the enemy turn, draw 2 cards. Enter the Monastery is a slow spell that says for 3 power and 2 justice. Draw 2 justice sigils from your deck. If you have double time influence, play one of them. Slag Fury Berserker is a 1/1 Oni for 3 fire. She has Berserk and Imbue. And then finally, to round out the commons, we have Disappear, the 6 power quad time influence fast spell. Put a unit on the bottom of its owner's deck. Absolutely premium removal. Going into the uncommons, Determination Engine is a 0/1 for 6 generic. Invulnerable to damage on your turn. Summon +1 attack for each influence you have the most of. Steam Rider is a 3/3 Yeti for 3 fire. If you have double time influence, it gets deadly. If you have double primal influence, it gets flying. And finally, Land's Edge, which is a card that I've tried to make work and I've never seemed to be in the deck for it. This is a 3-time relic. At the end of your turn, your stunned units get a +2/+2. And then finally, at the rare slot is Wild Growth Druid. This is a 1/2 Druid for 1 time. Decay. When you transform 1 or more cards, Wild Growth Druid gets a +1/+1 permanently. All right, Sunyveil, take it away, buddy.
All right, so the 3 cards that I'm looking at here are all time cards. If people have been following me on Twitter or have listened to my previous draft advice, they'll know that I've been having a lot of success with time in this format. I think I have 6 or 7, I think it's 7 win drafts in this format. All of them have been time decks, and I've drafted time something like 9 times. I think only twice have I not gotten 7 wins with time. So I think time is very good. And I think a large part of that is the decks that try to play on the opponent's turn. There is often Xenon. You have cards like Blur Haze Worm that give you a benefit from playing cards on the opponent's turn, and then you have a lot of options for ambush units and fast spells. So that's the plan that I really want to go into more than anything else. The one thing that I'm definitely avoiding is Primal, because I haven't had any sort of success with Primal in this format. Spellbound Ursine is actually probably the best Primal common, but even so, I want to stay away from it if I can. And there are 2 other good commons in this, Caravan Guard and Silverblade Reaper. They're fine, but they're nothing to write home about. And I think that well, I just feel like they're not huge threats, and that's, if you're not playing for the long game, that's something that you have to present are threats. So I'm just looking at the time cards. Steam Rider is a fine card if you're in both fire and time, or fire and primal, but I don't want to commit that hard this early, especially not to. I haven't had much success with the Praxis deck. So just looking at the time cards, Blur Haze Worms, which is the 4-cost that draws 2 cards on the opponent's turn, Disappear, which is the removal spell, and Wild Growth Druid. Wild Growth Druid is pretty good. Like, it doesn't take a lot for it to become a 2/3 decay or even a 3/4 decay, and then it's a real threat. Anytime you plunder, you're going to be able to give it +1/+1 permanently. It's a pretty solid early drop, and costing 1, that's the right cost. I might pick it here, but it's definitely close between Disappear and Blur Haze Worm. I think I take the Blur Haze Worm. Like, that's how the deck, like, that's what fuels the deck is playing a Blur Haze Worm on 4, and then on the next turn playing a fast spell, or waiting until turn 5 and playing Blur Haze Worm and silencing an opponent's units on their attack in order to like eat it with the worm. So and the fact that it draws 2 cards, that keeps you in the game. So I really like the worm. Disappears really great. The druid is solid, but I think that's where I am. And playing against the all ambush deck or all enemy phase deck is incredibly difficult to do. Yeah, sometimes they just don't have it, but like, every time you attack with 2/3, you might be running into a cult recruiter and just be losing it if you don't have a trick to push it through. So I think that deck's really good. I think it's difficult to play against, and Blur Haze Worm is a really good card in it.
Nice. So you did mention something. Since you're very high on time, how early do you feel comfortable taking a Disappear? Because obviously Disappear on its own standalone is a phenomenal card, but the quad influence is definitely a price. So how early are you comfortable taking a Disappear in your drafts? I mean, obviously that changes based on what's in the packs, but roundabout estimate.
Yeah, I'll say that I don't think Disappear is as good as the 7-cost 4/5. I forget what it's called, but it gives a unit Killer and Decay. Like, I think that card's just generally speaking better than Disappear. It's also worse than the one that is it Reality Snap, I think?
Yes,
Return
correct.
2
Yeah.
cards. Yeah. So like, I think Disappear is a fine card, but I don't think it's like an insane common. You're happy to have, 2 or maybe even 3 in your deck, but you're not like desperate for them. They're not a necessary part of the game plan, and which sounds weird because it's like the removal spell that you would use. But I feel like that deck doesn't really lean on its Disappears that much because of, well, basically just because the 7-drop is better.
Okay, nice. Yeah, no, that was great. So you finalized on Blur Haze Worm, correct?
Yeah,
which is definitely the adult pick. It goes in the most versions of the decks, and it just has a great payoff. Let's send it over to you, Alex.
No, I mean, overall, I think the pack is generally not that great. So I've seen this 1/2 get out of hand, like directly on the opponent's side of the board. So I think I would probably pick this 1/2, the rare. Just to try to jump in with that. If you, like Sonny said, you get 1 or 2 triggers, it's already a very respectable unit with Decay. And just generally overall not that strong of a pack. So I think that's where I would go with this one.
Okay. And John?
For me, it's actually closer between the Blur Haze Worm and the Caravan Guard, with the Druid like right behind that, I guess, for me. I'm like how Sonny likes time. I guess I kind of like Justice in this format, but I, first picking a Blur Haze Worm, I'm pretty happy about doing that over this Caravan Guard here, actually. So I also pick Blur Haze Worm.
Yep, and that would have been my pick as well. It just, the Earth Signs go pretty late, and I'm right there with you. Justice is my favorite faction in this format, and I like taking Caravan Guards, but I think if Justice is open, you're going to see those because not too many decks want them. And, we still have access to another 3/4 in the form of Volunteer and the 1/5 in the form of Siphoner Paladin. They're all at 3. So it's kind of replaceable versus Blur Haze Worm. There's really no replacement for Blur Haze Worm. So yeah, and it's a great standalone. So I think I would be a little conservative here as well. Stick with Sunyveil's decision, go with the Blur Haze Worm. But I just, that's also a bit of a personal preference as well, because if I took the Wild Growth Druid, I would not get any transform cards, nothing. I wouldn't get a single one. I wouldn't get Polymorph. I wouldn't get a Plunder, because that's just the way it works every time I try to make an engine. So But yeah, I have not played against Druid either, so I have no idea how that card plays. But I will trust you guys. So all right.
If I can add one more thing.
Sure.
So someone mentioned that the packs aren't, or this pack in particular wasn't very strong. And I would argue that just in general, the rares and uncommons are not busted. There's no like Heretics Cannon. There's no momentum builder. There's like impending doom, just game winning rares or uncommons. So I feel like this to me is actually about the level of power that I would expect from a pack like this. Yeah, sure, there's no big bomb, but I also just don't think that there are very many in the format, and I really like that about this format. It feels like, you know, you're in every game.
Yeah, true story. I'm trying to think of any uncommons that I think are absolutely busted right now. Where are you with Unbreakable Tradition? That's the 5-cost fast spell that doubles a unit's attack or stats, and then gives you, what was it? It was no, it's is it Huru influence, right? I think it gives you Huru influence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that card's good. I mean, that's one of the better cards in the set, but that only works when you're not too far behind in units, and it can get blown out by something like a disappear. So like I think that's pretty like it's reasonably similar to a Heretics Cannon, but I don't think it's as good, for example.
Yeah, fair. Because Heretics can also gave you Overwhelm, if I remember right.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a
Yes.
big difference.
Yeah, I guess the trade-off here is fast speed, but they have to block. They have to not block the unit that you want to get through. So yeah, that makes sense. Fair enough. All right. So that's our pack one, pick one. That was pretty exciting. Not gonna lie. Thank you so much for that insight, Sonny. Speaking of which, we will dive into our main topic, but since we have someone of your expertise on the show, I do want to capitalize on that a little bit. And if you don't mind, maybe giving us the Cliff Notes rundown of your hot takes for this format right now and what you're seeing success with, we would really appreciate that.
Oh, well, I think I already gave my cliff notes in that I think time is great. I actually misspoke earlier. I did achieve 7 wins with an Argenport deck once. That's the only non-time deck I've gotten to 7 wins with. But that deck was like really unreasonable. I forget why, but I just remember it being completely unreasonable. Anyway, what I found is that there aren't a ton of ways to punch through damage in this format. Like it's pretty good. Like defending against an attack is why I've found. Like units trade off pretty easily. There's not a ton of evasion that is like really troublesome. Units just block really well in this format. So it, I'm pretty scared being an aggressive deck because, you know, my opponent can just play a couple of Caravan Guards and then all of a sudden I can't do anything. Like that's a common. And I feel like with the ambush deck, like the 2/3 flyer that has ambush and flying on the opponent's turn, like that just eats so many early attackers that I'm just so scared to be playing an aggro deck. And that's part of why I like playing, you know, big time cards, the Hunting Ouse or whatever the 7-drop is called. And just having a bigger end game than my opponent.
Yeah.
One other thing I should note is that the relic weapons are pretty real. I mean, Justice has a lot of nice relic weapons. Justice, I think most people have Justice first and Time second, and I have Time first, but Justice is definitely second. Like, I think there's no question about that. Justice has a lot of really nice cards, and the relic weapons that are like 4/3s or 4/4s. Heirloom's Blade is a card in the curated packs that I think does a lot of work, being a 4/4 weapon that you can play pretty early on. So like those are things that you have to keep in mind, and stats are important because of that. I mean, stats are important because of imbue also, but like, you know, things block well, stats are important, and I want to be going for some sort of late game plan.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've gotten ran over. Don't get me wrong. There's my fair share of decks that I've ran over, and I've ran over people. Things like Bludgeoner on 2 with a badge on 3 and some combat tricks to back it up or something like that. But even the mono fire decks, they want to go wide and hit that either big unit or play that battle driver and start sending in tons of damage later in the game. So I think you're correct. You are going to win some games being very low to the ground, but it's going to be very tight, and you need to make sure that your spells line up correctly with the kind of defense that your opponent's trying to do. And like you said, Caravan Guard is an absolute house against those aggressive decks. Just a 3/5 coming down on 3 that really the opponent doesn't care if you kill it or not, because it was only a 3-drop and it probably wasn't going to attack anytime soon anyways.
Yeah, and you mentioned the bludgeoner with the badge of honor, and that's legitimate strategy. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But when you do that, you have to be worried about your opponent playing a scorpion wasp or a desert alchemist. Yeah, they're both uncommons, but like that you could just run into something that just ends your day, and that's something that's really scary. But like on the other hand, sometimes that's just what you have to do. If you have a hand that's just like, I have to go all in on this one unit, that's that's a legitimate game plan. Yeah, you're going to lose some amount of time to your opponent having a removal spell, but if like I've seen so many hands where that's just the best path to victory, and more often than not, I think it's going to end up working out.
So you mentioned obviously that you were highest on the Xenon deck and you were low on Praxis. Where does Combre and Elysian fall in that ranking system for you?
Yeah, I don't want to be primal if I can avoid it, so Elysian and Praxis, I think, are pretty low for me, and Combre is second best. You mentioned Argenport, and that's another faction pair that I really like. I feel like it just has a lot of good synergies within it, and because there's like kind of a sacrifice sub theme going on in both Shadow and Justice. So like I think that's a good place to be. But man, the time decks that I've drafted have done so much better for me than everything else.
I can believe it. I mean, if time's always open for you, time's always open. I keep finding myself stuck in Huru, and sometimes I can tell I maybe force it a little bit, but there are other times where Justice or Primal is just completely open a set of packs, and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll take it. And I see that when I get to my deck building, where even though I build my deck as I'm drafting, I still end up having a handful of cuts. So you're seeing the Praxis or the Xenon decks that you like. It is what it is. This format really rewards you for identifying the open lane, I feel like.
Ooh, is that a segue?
See, look at this. This is a professional right here. This is a professional. That's exactly why I appreciate having someone of your caliber on the show. All right. Well, then, that being said, let's go into our main topic. We're very rewarded for identifying where you're supposed to be in this format, but sometimes the choice is not necessarily the clearest. And so the common lingo for changing up your draft to facilitate a higher power level of deck or just efficiency is considered either pivoting or audible. When to do this can be extremely difficult. Essentially, by default, you should expect this to happen somewhere in pack 2, preferably sooner than later, but it has happened in pack 1 as early as that, or potentially as late as towards the end of pack 2. If you're doing it by pack 3, you are kind of restricting yourself and setting yourself up for failure by potentially not having enough time to pick up playables, especially if you did not see those factions in pack 4. But we're going to try to mitigate that. We have a professional on here. We have John and Alex that are just absolute stellar drafters. And so we are going to try to give you the inside scoop and a deep dive on how to really identify when it is correct to pivot and how to maximize that pivot so you get the better deck than the route you were initially going on. So first things we're going to talk about some of the reasons to pivot, i.e. change your game plan from maybe what was going in the beginning of pack 1 or even in the entirety of pack 1. And the first one is pretty straightforward for the most part, especially if you are listening to the set reviews. This podcast is set reviews as well as Kalibovich's card rankings, and that is that you potentially open up a game-winning rare or legendary. One disclaimer, if you're mono faction going out of pack 1 and you open this in pack 2, well, that's pretty straightforward. You're not really pivoting, you just identified a second color. But what we're talking about is, let's say you're out of pack 1 in a Praxis and then you open up a Justice bomb. And so now you need to look at whether you want to drop time or fire. And pretty straightforward. Sunny, do you want to take the first one and kind of what kind of rares and legendaries are you looking that will motivate you to essentially drop something that a faction from pack 1?
Yeah, so I can't speak to the current draft format so much because I feel like there just aren't as many bombs, and I'm not as versed in the curated packs and like what is possible to open as someone who knows the format inside out. But I think the greatest example of this is the the first draft tournament we had with the draft playoff, and I don't know if you guys were watching this, but Man and Mouse, who is a legendary drafter, was actually streaming the run, and I think that it was safe to say that he was the best drafter in Eternal at the time, and
Hands down.
yeah, he's insane, and in pack 2 he opens up a Roland's Honor Guard, and Roland's Honor Guard I think was a 7 cost 6/6 flyer with lifesteal, and he was not Injustice, and for me that is a reason to pivot. It was a format where lifesteal was incredibly relevant, flying was incredibly relevant. There weren't a lot of answers for a huge flyer like Roland's Honor Guard. It wins the game on its own, and I think that's basically the best thing a card can be, right? A card that wins the game on its own, that's the best thing that you can have on a card. And Roland's Honor Guard in that format was um that I mean, that's the card that you want to pivot for, if anything. Now, obviously, not every card is Roland's Honor Guard, and the funny thing is that Man and Mouse didn't take that Honor Guard, but ended up getting past the second one, and ended up taking that one and started pivoting into Justice, and ended up winning the tournament. But I think that your card that you're pivoting for, if you're opening a card, has to be game winning. I think that the much more common thing that for what causes a pivot is when the faction that you're looking for is drying up, and you're noticing that a different faction is flowing via the signals that you're receiving through these packs.
Yep. Great segue. Nice. Awesome. Yeah, that's it. The other point that he brought up is great, is the fact that, yeah, you are looking, and you, once again, let's go into an example again. You were in Praxis coming out of pack 1, and you felt really good about fire, or let's say because of Sunny, you were feeling really good about time, but your fire was kind of mediocre. So you open up pack 2, the first 2 picks, you look for something of Praxis, you're looking, and they're mediocre picks, and then you see a very strong, for example, Shadow. So Xenon might be, you see the next 2 packs, pick 3 and 4, have strong shadow cards in them. Well, picks 3, 4, and 5 is kind of when you start to identify what you're going to get past in the pack for the most part. And so if you're seeing strong shadow cards there, or even time, then you can kind of go ahead and drop fire and switch over to Xenon and try to fill out your deck there in packs 2 and 3. Another thing for the more build around aspects is the fact that there could be a hidden synergy in there that might actually make itself or present itself stronger than just having a generic good stuff deck. John, you want to go into that, potentially having a stronger synergy being presented to you in the later packs?
Sure. So let's if your color seems to be open, and this is like a high synergy set where certain dual factions have synergies that they want you to go for, and it seems like you're maybe the synergy that those cards are going for is not really proving to be there, or maybe what's looking to be a stronger set of synergy cards is showing up. Like maybe your color's open, but it's like actually you're meant to actually be in another lane. So it's like that could point you into an open lane outside of your color, even though they're in your color. Does that make sense?
For example, just using this, we have the Druid from pack 1. In most cases, you would take certain transform effects undervalued compared to just all around solid cards. But when you have a Druid and maybe another card that pays you off for transform effects, then you are presented with maybe a C+ card versus a C or C- level transform card. Because you now have synergies with that transform card, that card that was initially a C- could be a C+, and so it could adjust the picks that you're making based off of that. Can I explain that correctly? Was that what you were trying to say, John?
That definitely goes along with what I was saying. I was kind of going more of like a format specific meta thing, but yeah, no, you explain it much more clearly and broadly. So thank you for that.
So I think that for those of you who have drafted Cube in Magic the Gathering, there's an important lesson to be learned there, and it is draft archetypes, not colors. So what that is because in Cube, which is the Scion draft for Eternal, but in MTG, it's extremely fleshed out what strategies are present in what colors and like what is viable when. So like you might be drafting a blue card, but you have to play it in green decks, and it's not really a blue card. It's a card that goes in blue green strategies. And I think the best analog for this is something like Ravenous Thornbeast in Shadow. Is a good example, or maybe Burnout is another one, or like something that requires you to sacrifice things. So Ravenous Thornbeast, I think, goes really well in Argenport decks a lot of the time, right? You want to have that sacrifice fodder in order to make it a really powerful card. And there have also been points in Eternal's history where that card was actually a card for Stonescar decks, because that was where the sacrifice synergies were in. Now, when you're drafting, a lot of the time your archetype, your synergies are just whatever faction you're in, and you don't have to go too deep into it. But there are going to be cases where you have a card that's only good when paired with a specific faction, like a primal card that only pairs well with certain justice cards, and you have to view those cards in that way, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, much like we've talked about already, the Argenport deck. Argenport deck is the only really faction pair that's going to care about that sacrifice thing. So something like that Ravenous Thornbeast you mentioned will be a much higher value to the Argenport sack deck when they have the fodder for it than, say, the Xenon deck that may not have as many targets for them to sack.
Yeah, I mean, Ravenous Thornbeast might not be the best example because it's usually fine as a 3/3, but like that's the idea behind it.
So, and a couple of other under the cuff things. So we talked about synergies, and we understand that's something that maybe some of the newer players may not potentially be able to identify right away, and that's all right. That's something you build up to. It's something that you can do to challenge yourself. But a couple of things that you can also that may also cause you to pivot coming out of pack 1 is potentially you couldn't identify a correct lane. The packs were whack, and you couldn't lock in a faction because you were just getting past 2 different factions at the beginning and then 2 different factions at the end, and other cards were really good, and maybe you saw what you consider to be a B plus uncommon later in the pack, which didn't make sense. So going into pack 4, you might be like, okay, well, towards the end we were in Huru, so hopefully Huru's open. And then you come to find out in pack 2 you start getting past things for Stonescar, and you figure like, well, I couldn't really figure out pack 1, but I have a good grasp on what's going on in pack 2, so probably the same thing is going to happen in pack 3. And then you adjust to pivot there to essentially just kind of ship your first pack, and hopefully to make up the difference in packs 2, 3, and 4, which is completely possible, especially once again in this current format where people try to stick to their lanes as much as possible, where you will see cards from a faction that you value very highly pass to you very late because whoever is picking ahead of you just isn't in those factions. You see especially a lot of mono fire and a lot of mono justice in this format, so it is completely understandable and realistic for you to see very good justice cards or very good fire cards either go late or absolutely be nowhere in any of the packs, because people that go to gravitate those colors try to stick to them. The flip side to that is where you have an idea, once again, going out of pack 1 and 2, or pack 1, I'm sorry, where you're like, yeah, okay, I kind of have an idea. You went down, let's say you were trying to stick to the mono fire, so you stuck to a couple of less than optimal fire cards to stick to that route, and that, but you do identify that time was open. When you go into pack 2 and you start looking at cards, you're seeing that there's some fire going on, but not really enough to make your mono deck. And you remember that pack 1 did show some serious time cards open, so you can potentially put some weight into that being open going into pack 4, and thus you start to cater your picks in packs 2 and 3 to accommodate that. Alex, do you have anything to elaborate on that kind of design or cause for a pivot?
Well, I did. I was muted out. I was trying to interject on the synergy question. So sorry about this if it's a little after the fact. But I get stuck listening to you guys when we have a guest on. I feel like I'm in school a little bit. So sorry about that. Thanks for coming on, Sonny. We appreciate it.
Hi.
But so stronger synergy presenting itself later. This happens more to me, anyways, when the packs get flipped. And the ones that are of the current set are in the middle, because those are the more synergistic packs, in my opinion. The draft packs are kind of all over the place. So when the draft pack is first, it's kind of like, oh, what's going to come in the second and third packs? Because, for example, you guys mentioned Xenon, and maybe in pack 2, back when Xenon Cultist was a thing. Sonny, you're very familiar with that. And it say the 2-1, you're getting a lot of the 2-1s passed to you, and then all of a sudden, okay, Xenon was open, and in pack 1 you just remained open, didn't really have a set 2 colors. Then you can, like, okay, now I'm going to go into Xenon, I'm going to drop my red and just go into, yellow and purple colors or whatever. But that's something that's unique to Eternal, because they flip their packs around, and it's kind of, I like it, because it just creates it's like a whole new draft environment when that happens. And then as far as the packs being whack, it's in the first pack, I try to stay open as possible, especially if I'm having a hard time identifying my lane. I'll just stay in, pick the best cards, and then hopefully in packs 2 and 3, you're getting those from the same player, and you'll get hopefully signs as to what is open. And then by pivoting, you're kind of determining what your deck's going to be. It's more of like locking it in, like you have on the notes here, instead of pivoting. But yeah, just gotta keep your eyes peeled for what's coming, like in the second and third packs, especially for pivoting.
The biggest thing, the issues I've had in this format is when I come out of pack 1 thinking I have a deck, and then I'm seeing things like Defile and Death Strike going 3rd, 4th, 5th pick in pack 2, and I'm like, oh man, I should really pick up this removal and drop one of my colors to pick up Shadow. That's happened to me quite a bit. Sonny, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, our lives would be a lot easier if no one pivoted, because then that would get rid of the need to pivot, right? The signals you get would just be rock solid the entire time, because anything can happen. The person passing to you could pivot hard, and all of a sudden a faction that was signaled as being open could be closed. I mean, you just gotta make the percentage play, and that is to read the signals and try to figure out what's open. That's just kind of what you gotta do every single time, and that's all you can do. And sometimes it's going to work out and sometimes it's not, but you gotta accept that it will lead to things working out more often than not.
Yeah, well said. All right, so those are the reasons why you'd want to pivot. And to sum it up in broad strokes, it's either A, you have a pick that will actually, I just plain and simple, you have a way to adjust your deck to increase its overall efficiency and power level is the reason why you would pivot. It's better to have, obviously, if we're going on 1 to 10 scale, if you can drop a faction to gain another faction and bump your score from a 5 out of 10 to a 6 or 7 out of 10, then by all means go ahead and do it. And those were the reasons. Now, we're going to give you a couple of tips and tricks to help mitigate potentially pivoting late, much like what happens. Sometimes the packs just don't line up your way. People ahead of you are picking, maybe rare drafting, or maybe just picking different things, or they dropped their phone, or their kid clicked on the draft picks and things are not making sense. So you end up having mixed signals and identify what lane and lock one in a little bit later. Some of the tips, John, going back to you, do you want to go ahead and go over some of the tips to mitigate this?
Sure, we can start off with the first one here, prioritizing cards from your primary faction. So let's say, your first few picks were all in one color and they were all like very strong. And then as the packs, as that first pack is coming along, there's nothing really standing out one way or the other. The cards are all kind of middling, so might as well just go with what you've already got that's good, right? it keeps you completely open to the possibilities of packs 2 and 3. And the way Eternal drafts work, that's going to come from a completely different player. They don't know what you're drafting. They don't care what you're drafting. So that's one of the best ways to be, like coming out of pack 1, is to basically be one color. If the packs work out that way. However, I mean, if you were just getting really strong cards in 2 factions, that's basically unavoidable, and that's not something you should prioritize necessarily. But in that case I mentioned, you definitely want to just prioritize those similar power level cards that are in that primary faction that you're already in, and that way, like, even if you identify that open color halfway through pack 3, you can still just pick it up, because you're basically, your power base is going to be easy no matter what when you're only 2 factions, I think.
And speaking, great segue, man, you guys are killing it tonight. So the other thing, of course, is to be able to play your cards. And if we're once again referencing Ardent Depths, there are plenty of very powerful commons and uncommons that have triple and quadruple influence. So Sunny, do you mind breaking down how important it is to make sure you can play your cards, and how do you could potentially mitigate if you take something like a Disappear and a Smogwing Tinker, both requiring quad influence?
Yeah, I mean, both those cards are very good, but it can be pretty difficult to get to make sure that you have the influence to play them. So in this format, I think it's important to look at cards that give you extra influence, not just the one influence you get per sigil. So like symbols are useful tools. Evangels, I think, are very, very good in that, because they also provide you with just like a pretty reasonable 2-drop to fight for the board position in the early game. And yeah, especially with these quad influence cards like Disappear and Smogwing Tinker, every little splash you make makes it more difficult to play them by a lot. It's not like it's I feel like more than any other format, you're disincentivized from splashing stuff in this format. As an example, I mean, I've played some cards that I wasn't proud to play, but thought that they were perfectly fine for the deck for the role I needed to play. I think that the most recent example is the 6/4. It's like Direwood Prowler or something other. It costs 6. It's a shadow card. It's just a 6/4, and
Yeah, the
that's
elephant.
that's really behind rate. I don't think anyone's saying that's a good card, but for what I needed in the deck, just something big, it's bigger than what my opponents had. It worked out fine, and I think that those cards often fly under the radar in draft. So instead of splashing that multi-faction card or something like that, I think this format really leads itself to playing cards that are not phenomenal. Like, I think Lunging Wisp is another example. It's just trying to come up with cards that, like, just people are not going to say pick this card because it's good. You're just picking this card because it fulfills a purpose in your deck. And there's a lot of like negative filler cards in draft that people gloss over that I think are actually pretty good in this format, because of how important it is to have a very consistent power base to be able to play those quad influence cards and whatnot.
Yeah, and another point that you mentioned that I think is phenomenal is the fact that, to take into consideration that not every card in your deck has to be busted for this to happen. It's more important to have your generic blueprint of a solid draft deck that has a good curve. It has its 2-drops, 3-drops, 4-drops, and it has its top end, because if you don't have that right chemistry of interactive spells, weapons, and units all the way up the curve, you have a chance of just losing to a deck that will have that, regardless of how powerful it is. And you having the intelligence and the know-how that, hey, I just need a 6-drop in my deck. Doesn't matter how crazy good or crazy bad it is, it just needs to have that slot, so I have some top end. And that allowed your deck to go the distance, because there were some times where you needed something bigger than what was on the board. Vice versa, the flip side of that is that it's very easy when you pivot. No one likes taking 2-drops. They're, for the most part, not the funnest cards to take. They're not flashy, so it's easier to prioritize something higher up on the curve. But when you do pivot, there is a chance that you thought you had 6 2-drops, but when you look, 3 of those were in a color you pivoted out of, and now you're stuck with just 3. So make sure that you are filling out your curve, and regardless of what you think the power level of that specific card is, as long as your curve looks nice after the pivot, then it will pay dividends later on in the games. And then, of course, the last thing is just simply what I mentioned a couple of times before, is to make note of what you saw in pack 1, whether it was cards you were picking or not, because there is a good chance that you will see those cards again in pack 4. And so that could potentially help you make some of your decision points when you are going through packs 2 and 3 to fill out the rest of your deck. Alex?
I really like, and I long for the days when we'll get to do it again, where if you just have a lot of fixing, you can get away with kind of a train wreck draft, because if you could cast all your spells. But that's not the current set that we're in. You kind of need to know your lane, or you're going to be in usually a bad spot in this format.
Dude, it wasn't that long ago that we were doing 5-color good stuff, and you already miss it?
It's just my bag. I miss it.
Oh, man. All right. Sonny, any closing statements on this topic?
I think it's better to have a deck with mediocre cards with a nice curve and a powerful or like a consistent power base than it is to have a basically a deck that spans across 3 factions where the cards that you're splashing for don't work well on a splash. So, I mean, whatever you do, try to be pretty decisive about it. Try not to waffle between 2 things pretty quickly, because I think that's how you get into real trouble, is if you go back and forth. So, even if you have to play with a train rock deck, like that is a deck that can get you, 3 or 4 wins. It can get you a reasonable prize at the end of the day. You just have to, make sure that at the end of the day, you've put together a functional deck and you have enough playables at different spots on the curve.
And that also is a reason as well to pivot into a regular deck, because if you do take some of those high synergy cards, for example, if you take, I know this is not in this current format, but if you take that Mysterious Waystone that rewards you for having the sacrifice deck, and you're looking for either the sacrifice enablers or the payoffs, and one of those are not there, you can identify the fact that that synergy is not going to happen. So you are kind of sabotaging yourself, and then could essentially pivot into, cool, I will drop the sack synergy and just draft a deck, much like what Sonny was just talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately, being boring is often like
correct.
It leads to better outcomes.
Yeah,
it's all correct. Yes,
I know, I was trolling. Sorry. It really is. It's funny. John and I mentioned this the other day, that you can get, when streamers are drafting, it's like, okay, this is probably the adult pick to make, but we're gonna take this one and see what happens. And then whenever you catch them on ladder when they're not streaming, the deck is just sure nuts and bolts, like no funny stuff at all. So it is what it is. But okay, one last thing I want to do is I have a little pivot game for you guys, and just to kind of maybe potentially give the listeners and / viewers a better understanding of some of the cards that you might want to pivot because of. Granted, I understand every draft is different. Your decks can look differently, and thus these cards can be valued differently. But for the sake of simplicity, let's just assume that you are in 1.5 colors coming out of pack 1. So you are firmly in one color and you are half in another color, like kind of medium, but it is neither of those factions is what these cards are in. All right, fair enough.
Okay. And this is like you're getting past this like pick 2 or 3 or whatever in pack 2, basically.
Yes, correct. So then you guys let me know if you would pivot into this or not, and that's gonna be for the listeners' benefit. I mean, I'm gonna take notes so I know what to do when I see these cards, but it also helps the listeners. So first up, we have General Azaleo. This is a 6-cost fire card it's a 6/4 with quick draw, and all your units get +2 attack. That's it. Period. All the time, as long as he is in play. John.
I think probably.
So pivot?
Yes.
All right, pivot for John. Sonny.
Yeah, I take General Azaleo. It can win the game on its own. Well, not on its own, but on it, like
Pretty
it
much.
being the only good card surrounded by bad cards, it can win you the game.
Yeah, it turns all your 2 drops into 4 drops all of a sudden. Fair. All right, and Alex.
I have to really know what else is in the pack. but
Oh, you're killing me, Smalls. Killing me, bro.
I will say generally yes. Generally yes.
All right. Is it because we're recording? Is that why you don't want to like throw down the flag?
No, it's okay. No, it's like I like Azaleo. It's just how bad is my other color? You know, because it's just
Just I said medium.
it's medium. Then sure, yeah, I said yes, sure.
Yeah.
Facepalm, Yoda facepalm. All right.
Yep.
Number 2, Sunny. We have Hammerhand. This is an 8-cost fire card. It is a 10/5, and it reads Summon, you win the game. No, I'm just kidding. It deal 5 damage to 2 enemies, and then corrupt 5, so you get to do it again. Pivot or stay?
I think I'm staying. Like 8-drop is really difficult to get to. It might be more doable in this format than other formats, but I'm still scared of trying to take an 8-drop and make it work.
Okay, Alex?
I think Jedi would say yes, but I'm with Sunny. I would say no. I think.
All right, and John?
Stay.
I think you guys are all correct, but you are also correct in the fact that I would 100% take it. Like,
Yep.
if I could force Hammerhand, I will. All right, moving on. Next up, Shavka's Loot. This is a 3-cost relic with Spellcraft 4. It will cast Obliterate. While it's in play, all your single faction units have Warcry, and then pay 2. Or I'm sorry, I think it's pay 2 and sack 2 units to make a 7/7 dragon with Overwhelm. Durgan. John.
Yes.
So pivot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Pivot.
Okay, Sunny.
I'm staying. I don't think this card is very good.
All right, and Alex.
Yeah, I'd really want to look for daggers to make the sacrifice outlet work, but yeah, I think I would as well switch.
Okay. Alex, are you just trolling me today, dude? Right.
I'm always trying. Yes.
Oh god. All right. Next up. All right, Cindy is starting off with you, Sunny. We have Toto Pioneer. This is a 2-cost 1/1. Pay 4 to give another unit +4 and Overwhelm. Stay or pivot?
I'd probably take it. Like this card's a nightmare in draft.
You are not wrong. John?
I would pivot so fast.
Alex?
100% wind slam pivot.
All right. Moving on. Bodhi and Rocks. This is a 7-cost 9/9. That's it. But it has Pledge. And if your hand is empty at the end of your turn, you can draw Bodhi and Rocks. Sunny.
I would probably stay. Like 7-cost 9/9. Is that really better than a 7-cost 6/6? It doesn't seem that much better than a 7-cost 6/6. So I'm gonna stay.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, this is a card I'm always like happy to get if I'm in that color, but I wouldn't pivot for this guy. For them, I should say.
John?
Stay.
All right, good to know. All right, sending it back to you, Alex. Grodaw's Burden is a 5-cost relic, and your single faction units have Exalted, and you can spellcraft for 3 to, I forgot the name of the spell, but it tucks the unit into the player's deck unit or relic, and then pay 5 to draw a card.
Yes, I would pivot for this.
John?
I think it's Bury the Past, and I would pivot super easy for this card.
Yeah, and you are correct. That sounds right. And Sunny?
I don't think so.
What?
It costs 8 to get the spellcraft thing, right? So
Yes.
yeah, I think I'm holding for I'm staying away from this. Yeah, like I know this is a good card, but it's triple time and it's very expensive to get the immediate value. So yeah.
So do you just not do a little bit more intrigue, because I appreciate that the Exalted, your units get Exalted doesn't appeal that much to you because it's single faction?
I mean, that's fine, but I don't think it's worth a 5-cost card.
Okay, cool. No, perfect. That's exactly why I picked these cards. All right, next up, John. Marizo Gladiator Hero. This is a 7-cost 7/7 Exalted. Mastery 10, play 3 units from the top 10 cards of your deck.
Yes, pivots.
John. Or, I'm sorry, Alex.
Pivot unless I don't get any triggers on my mastery.
All right, and Sunny.
Yeah, this card's incredible. Pivot.
All right, cool. Striking Snake Formation, Sunny, is a 5-cost slow spell, and all your units gain killer.
I'm staying.
Alex?
I'm also staying.
John?
Yeah, it's a stay. I mean, that's you gotta already have a setup for that to be good too, like for your deck construction.
All right. Kodosh Stranger is a 3-cost 2/1 Injustice, and every time it attacks, you double its stats permanently. And when it comes into play, a stranger comes into play, you buff the top unit card of your deck with its stats. John?
I would pivot for this. Yeah.
Ooh, all right. Sunny, you recently had this in the deck. What do you think about it in limited?
I mean, it's good, but I don't think I'm pivoting for it. I feel like it just trades in combat. Like, you basically have to be crushing someone in order for this to actually kill them.
All right, and Alex.
Yeah, I'd also stay.
Okay, all right. I like that some of them have been locked on and some of them have been diverse.
You should probably listen to Sunny more than us, but yeah.
Yes.
Depends on who you're asking.
Well, all right. Anyone that is qualified for Worlds, please raise their hand. Exactly.
No.
All right. So next up, Sunny. Restrained Action is a 6-cost cursed relic. Injustice gives all of the opponent's units a -1/-0 curse when they come into play, and at the start of or at the end of your opponent's turn, I believe it will play. Yeah, because you can attack with the unit, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You get to play a unit from your deck. It starts off at 1 cost, then it goes up to 2, 3, 4, etc., for as long as you have Restrained Action in play. Stay or pivot.
I forget how good this card is in limited. I seem to remember it being very good, but it's been a while since I've seen it in play. If it's as good as I think I remember it, I would pivot.
All right.
It's really good.
So, John, you'd pivot?
Yeah, I'd pivot too.
Alex?
Yes.
Well, yeah. So, like, I might be confusing this with Kodosh Sees All, but that also just might
It's
be an
really
instant card.
similar.
They're both good. You're on the right track. They're both very powerful.
All right.
All right. Now, I mean, obviously, Restrained Action gets better the higher quality units
it like
you have in your
ramps
deck.
into it. It's like a little slower, but it like finishes harder or whatever.
Okay.
They're very similar.
Sunny, Roland's Honor Guard, 7-cost 6/6 flyer with lifesteal.
Yes, obviously.
For the record, this was in here before you mentioned mum, so just throwing it out there. The word works in mysterious ways.
Didn't they change it so it's a 6-cost 5/5 flyer with lifesteal? I mean, my answer is the same either way.
You might be right. I'll check that while
That is exactly correct. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
it's 6 and 5/5. I had one in my draft like yesterday.
Oh, I was probably going off of my memory.
I pivoted.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, there you go. And then Alex?
Yeah, I didn't know that had happened to Mom, but I would follow in those footsteps and pivot as well.
Yeah, I actually remember that draft because he passed it and then immediately got another one. It was like, well, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice, and took it. So, Brutal Frostlord is next, Alex. This is a 4-cost 2/4 flyer and primal with killer. Pay 7 to deal damage to the enemy player equal to the cards in their hand. Stay or pivot?
Stay.
Sunny?
Stay. I don't think this card's very good.
And John.
Definitely stay.
All right. Crystallize is next, John. This is a 5-cost slow spell, and then when it play it, stun and deal 1 damage to each enemy unit. Stay or pivot?
I'd probably stay.
Okay. Sunny?
Yeah, I'd also stay. I think this card's really overrated.
And Alex?
I managed to win a draft game yesterday that my opponent did this to me, so I definitely stay.
All right, nice. Because, yeah, that's definitely a hot take for sure. High Sky Lookout is next, Alex. This is a 3-cost 3/3 Reckless and Primal. If you have a flyer in play, summon. When you have a flyer in play, if you have a flyer in play, invoke Primal, and then Corrupted 3, so you get to do it again. Stay or pivot?
I love his name, but I would stay.
Sunny?
I mean, you're just asking to run into a caravan guard, right? It's also in my least favorite faction, so I'm definitely staying.
And John.
Stay.
All right. Sunny, Solar Blast. This is a 7-cost fast spell in your least favorite faction. Set primal. Deal 7 damage to each unit and site.
So this one I actually would probably pivot for. I think that sweeper effects in limited in particular are so rare and so difficult to deal with, or like maybe they're not difficult to deal with, but they have such a like unique impact on the game and how the game plays out that anything like this I'm pretty excited for.
Yep. All right. Alex.
Sunny says primal is bad, so no.
All right. And John.
Yeah, I'd pivot for this. Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that this thing is a fast spell is so good. Because you can just do it at the end of your opponent's turn. It's like busted. All right. Going into Shadow. Ashara, the Deadshot is a 5-cost Shadow card with a 6/3 with Deadly and Quick Draw. John.
Yeah, I'd pivot.
Sunny.
This one's right on the edge for me. Yeah, I'm not sure. I would probably. Well, I don't know. It's really good. I'm right on the edge. Depends how I'm feeling that day, I suppose.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And Alex.
I think I would stay.
Okay. All right. All right. So right down the middle for this one. Wow. Interesting. All right. Devious Drone is a 4-cost 1/1 in Shadow for Entomb. Kill an enemy unit. Alex.
Stay.
John.
And I had this past me yesterday in a draft, and it was like pick 2, I passed it, and then pick 3, another one, I passed that one, and then pick 4, I passed that one too. So pass.
All right. It's Sunny.
Yeah, I'm staying. This doesn't win the game on its own.
All right. Flamebathe Reformation is a 3-cost relic. Pay 2, give a unit, one of your units, exalted and sack it. Sunny.
Stay. I don't like relics that don't do anything immediately.
John.
Man, if all of my cards already are just like battle skill heavy, might pivot, but if not like that very specific case, I wouldn't. There's no way.
All right. And Alex.
I would stay as well.
Okay. Lathrai Falchion is a 4-cost 4/1 weapon, and it gives English. Lathrai Falchion is a 4-cost weapon that gives a +4/+1 and lifesteal to a unit. Alex.
I would stay.
Sunny.
I would also stay.
John.
Yeah, it's a stay.
Okay. And now going into our multi-faction cards, and hopefully I picked the good ones. Start off with you, John. Shinra Speaks, 5-cost board wipe in Combray. Slow speed.
And I'm in one of these colors already.
Yeah.
That's like my main color. Yeah, I'll pivot for Shinra Speaks. Yeah.
Okay. Sunny.
Yeah, Shenra Speaks falls into the categories of sweepers that you don't see in limited, so I'll take that.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex.
Yes.
All right. Champion of the Order is next. Alex, it's a 5-cost 2/2 in Huru. If you have 5 Justice Influence, it doubles its stats. If you have 5 Primal Influence, it makes a copy of itself. Both happen at the beginning of your turn. Pivot or stay?
Stay.
Sunny?
Stay.
John?
Yeah, I'm definitely staying.
Okay. Feeding Time is next. It's a 4-cost slow spell, and Feln, turn a unit into a piggy and kill it. Sunny?
Stay.
John?
Stay.
Alex?
It's really good, but I would stay.
All right. That one I think actually has some practical application in this format because you see a lot of those go by.
You see a lot.
Strange Blacksmith is a 4-cost 4/3 Rakano Stranger, and whenever you play a stranger, return a weapon from your void to your hand and pay 8 to Lightning Helix someone, aka deal 3 damage to a unit or player or enemy and gain 3 armor. Sunny.
This one's a really tough one, but I think it's good enough that I would pick it because like it doesn't like kill anything and it doesn't dominate the board, but just the fact that you can click on it in the late game is pretty insane.
It gives you like some level of inevitability, right?
Yeah.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, like Sonny said, this one's close. Sure, that's a good pivot card.
John.
Yep, pivot.
Okay. Last two. Surso the Great Glutton is a 5-cost 6/6 overwhelm in Elysian, and when he is blocked or blocks a unit, they turn into a 2/2 pig. Let's go with you, John.
I feel like I'd pivot for that one.
Okay, Alex.
Yeah, I love Surso. That's a pivot.
And Sonny.
I'm not entirely sure. Like Surso beats everything in combat, but it's also like surprisingly not as potent in limited as it is in certain constructed formats. So, I mean, how many pump spells are there? Like, it's saddle up in the format? It's not, right?
Changey stick is 10 times boosted, so.
Changey stick is 10 times boosted?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
So changey stick is like, I mean, you can make him a flying pig or whatever. It just in the packs 2 and 3, 10 times. It means that as a common in those packs, it has a 10 times more chance of occurring than a normal card. Finest Hour is also 10 times boosted right now. For another example.
But I also see what Sonny's saying too. Is in constructed, the overall quality of a unit is higher than it is in limited. So in limited, there's more chances of your opponent to just triple block them or whatnot, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
That's
So what he's saying is you'd want to have ways to like push past that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no. I mean,
No,
like,
sorry.
I feel like it's pretty easy to defend against Surso. So, like, I mean, Surso seems like it's a really good card, but I think once you dig under the surface, it's not actually as game breaking as you might think, based on if you've seen it in constructed.
Gotcha. Fair enough. All right. And our last one is Knucklebones. This is a 6-cost relic. Summon, transform each card in your deck, and then at the start of your turn, you get to draw an extra card. Sonny?
See, this seems like a trick question. It's like you're telling the audience whether we're worth watching as drafters or not. Because, like, are we going to do something completely outrageous just for entertainment's sake, right?
Yep, pretty much.
Do it.
Okay, so yeah, I'm pivoting for this.
Yes. All right, John.
No.
Alex.
I'm watching the stream. Sonny's doing it. Woo!
Yes.
Fair. I mean, you get an extra card every turn, right?
But
even if the card is absolutely horrible. All right, cool. Just wanted to do a little fun game, get some opinions here, lightning round-ish type thing.
Yeah.
So give you guys an idea, and I like the fact that it wasn't just cut and dry. I tried to pick some diversified ones, but I couldn't guarantee it, and you guys proved me right, so that works. All right, guys, that's going to do it for our main topic. Once again, it's something that is essentially the next level in drafting when you get there, is being able to let go of faction to increase the quality level of your deck and earn yourself an extra win or two, get those chest upgrades. So I hope this was helpful. Definitely let us know if you found it absolutely whack or if you did find it helpful, so we know how to gauge shows in the future. Okay, so our second topic of the day is that we got a draft update. Granted, there was no major content update, so we did not flip the draft packs, and they are still in the Eternal packs are still packs 2 and 3. But we did get a bunch of cards added to it. So real quickly, I figure I will go through. I'm not going to go through all of them. I learned this last time. It's way too much stuff. But if you guys want to, the link will be in the show notes to the full list of cards that were added, as well as the weighted cards, the adjustments that were made to the weighted, much like what John said. You'll see, what is it, John? It's times 1, times 6, times 10.
It's 5 and 10 on this format. Okay. They keep changing it every time, but right now it's 1, 5, and 10. Yeah.
Okay.
There's asterisks to indicate that.
Yep. So you can catch that link down below. Of note, one of the major ones is Changey Stick, like John mentioned, where it's a 2-cost relic or weapon that gives a unit +1/+1 flying, and then Spellcraft 5, it will cast Polymorph on a unit. It is great, and man, you could feel that ×10. You are seeing a ton of them right now. Another big thing that was added is the smugglers, which isn't quite a big deal for limited. I mean, granted, it still gives you free access to your market aside from the etchings, but it's more of an impact for constructed. But I still think it is quite impactful regardless. Obliterate is in the format, so that's exciting. Now, if you thought you could get blasted by Flash Fire, you can also get just straight up blasted by Obliterate, so that's a thing. Let me see if any of these other ones really stand out to me. Any of the other additions stand out to you guys? I think that's
the Trailmaker ×10.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah,
I'm excited for Trailmaker's impact on Constructed, because that is a huge deal, I think, as far as Influence Matters cards go.
Mm-hmm.
As well as like the additional ramp and whatnot. Yeah.
That and a safe return being back down to 1, I think, is impactful.
Oh yeah, good call on that. Yeah, the nerf adjustment and whatnot. I do agree that's pretty big, because it's just so easy to leave 1 up.
Okay, so this is, a bit off topic, but I actually think that's I think that Safe Return is one of the most overrated cards in the past, several years of Eternal. I don't think it needed to be nerfed.
You're probably correct.
In constructed or in limited?
Well, either. I just don't think it's a great card.
Really, people were high valuing Safe Return, because man, I can count on one hand how many decks I've put it in.
Well, yeah, I mean, it got nerfed at some point, right? Because the Alessia deck. I mean,
yeah, there was like one deck that it was in, and so they nerfed it, right?
Yeah, but it's only good in conjunction with investment into that unit. If you play like Stand Together or like a some sort of killer spell, and I feel like, well, I don't know, that's a lot of investment into one unit. Safe Return is a further investment into that unit. So like I've just always thought that Safe Return was not very good. I don't know why they nerfed it the first time, and I don't think it'll be good now that it's back down to 1 either.
Granted, it would give you Combre is kind of middle of the list, but the fact that you can reset your Alisar would be kind of nice as well. But yeah, I agree. Like I said earlier, I cut it from a lot of decks, because I mean, really the biggest way you get a payoff in limited is if you have some kind of bomb rare or big unit that you want to keep alive. So when your opponent does have the combat trick or the deadly unit for it, you can bounce it. But once again, it won't kill the deadly unit, so you still have to deal with it somehow. But man, actually,
It'd be fun to play with Blur Haze Worm.
True. Yeah, that's kind of busted. Are there?
I still think it's worse than the science spell, though.
Yeah, I mean, I like having a teleport with that. I think I'd still rather just have a teleport, just because it's more flexible. But
yeah,
I'm trying to look at.
It's a nice little move.
Commons and uncommons, and I'm not. Oh, were the conjurings always ×10?
No, yeah,
that's a huge
it's
one.
It's not like they were in the packs, but yeah, like the weighting changes are pretty massive, actually. Like, yeah, all the conjurings are ×10 now. Send help.
Welcome to the last format. There you go.
Yeah.
No wonder I keep getting win conjurings. I was wondering, I'm like, are people not picking this up? Let's see.
Well, I mean, people are bots or whatever, with the format fresh. These packs have been a little crazy, on top of the changes.
Yeah, good point. Any of these weighted cards look that you guys want? Yeah, the conjurings definitely stood out to me. I'm looking at the commons and uncommons right now, and really none of the other ones are standing out to me too much that I could tell going through it. Or are there any that stand out to you, Sonny?
Okay. Not really. I mean, I'm going to be evaluating these for constructed mostly for the upcoming ECQ. So, thinking about or the changes to the format for the upcoming ECQ. So, I'm not really thinking about draft right now.
Fair enough. Ooh, metal is weighted ×10, so that's definitely expect your opponents to have that. That's for sure. Metal is such a good. Oh, that card is definitely overperformed, I think. Just being able to negate damage. Silence. Yeah, I guess that's it. I think those are the biggest ones. Are the touches? Yeah, well, touch of battle is weighted. So that probably means all the touches are weighted, right?
I had a touch in like 2 of my 3 drafts since they changed them, so I think those must be weighted, right?
Dive bombs weighted again, so your Justice has not. So that might make Combre a little bit better now. They have like another way to push a ton of damage through.
The seats are weighted as well. Was that right?
Yeah, great point. Yeah, seats are ×10, but they're uncommons, but you should see more of those going around.
Ooh, Mantle of Justice is weighted ×10. I'm gonna be picking those up like nobody's business. So okay, that will do it for our main topics, which leads us into our What's the Play. This week's What's the Play? Our opponent is on Xenon with no power open, and they're at 18 life. We are on Argenport with 4 open power, and we are at 25. The board state consists of a Talir's Favor, an Apprentice Mage, a Sage of the Sands, and a the Midnight Cultist. Is that what it is? The 3/3 that mills you, right?
Sunset Priest.
Sunset Priest. Thank you. Sorry. Anyways, it's the annoying cultist I never played. Anywho,
The annoying cultist.
we have a Kira. We have a 1/1 flyer with Revenge, the Silverwing. We have the 0/6 Decay Gator, Crocodile, and we
Blockadile.
Blockadile, there you go. I like that, John. And we have the 1/1 Flying Deadly Reaper. Our hand consists of a Siphoner Paladin, the 5/2 Arachnid that plunder and sack a unit when it enters the battlefield, a 0/3 Canary, or 0/4 Canary for 3, and the Urgent Missive, which is the 1-cost fast spell that sack a unit to make 2 1/1s. That's it. So Sunny, you're the expert. Let's start off with you, my friend, before the rest of us make fools of ourselves.
This is a really interesting board position. I mean, there are a lot of options. You have 2 cards that sacrifice things, so like you have to figure out how you're going to sequence that. I think what I do here is I attack with both the flyers, and then I just pass the turn. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to Urgent Missive the 1/1 and make 2 units, and then I'm going to use those 2 1/1s, one to sacrifice to the 5/2 Arachnid to plunder away this Canary to make a second Justice, and then the other one to sacrifice to the Siphoner's Paladin in order to make a weapon, most likely. So the thought process here is you're on the offensive in this. You've got a clear path to attack, and your opponent does not. If they attack in, you get to make the Crocodile is actually going to be a 3/6 with decay. If you play Urgent Missive, so because you play the card and then you play the 2 1/1s, so that counts as 3 cards. And I think like something else you could do is to play the Canary just to block, but I honestly just don't think the Canary is doing anything here, so you might as well peg it to plunder for the Arachnid. Now, if you no, yeah, that's my game plan. It's possible that if you draw a Shadow Sigil, you might want to plunder that instead, but that's what I'm looking at here.
Okay. All right. Alex?
I mean, that was very good, I think. And Sunny explained why do you want to wait and do the missive on your opponent's turn, because you're going to get extra triggers on your 06. So I attack with maybe just the 1/1 Revenge and leave back the deadly guy, maybe. That's the only thing I would do maybe different. And then, use the 2 tokens or the 2 cultists that you get to do your Siphoner Paladin and your Spider. I think that's pretty good.
Okay. All right. And John?
Yeah, I honestly agree 100% with what Sonny said. Attacking with both of the flyers here because, like he said, we're the aggressor here. That's double the clock versus attacking with just one. Yeah, and that also kind of like baits the opponent, into getting aggressive too, and then kind of getting wrecked by your Crocodile. Although like they're probably a little hesitant just because of the way that Crocodile works anyway, and maybe they've identified a fast spell. But either way, I think what Sonny said is exactly what I would do.
Yeah, I should have also mentioned that it's also pretty good to coerce them into attacking in this spot.
Mm-hmm.
Just for the sake of I don't know, make it seem slightly more complex than how easy you navigated that, and I do think you're 100% correct and explained it absolutely phenomenal. Is there any reasoning for you to look at potentially playing the Arachnid this turn and plundering, and then still leaving up Urgent Missive?
I don't think that's too unreasonable, but like, what are you sacrificing? The urgent, especially when it comes to sacrifice cards that want you to sacrifice them, you need to make sure that you have enough fodder, right? You don't want to sacrifice your last unit with Combust if you have a Devour in your hand. And I think this is a pretty similar situation where the urgent missive is something that requires a sacrifice, but also provides fodder to sacrifice later. So, like, if you were going to do something like that, maybe playing the urgent missive and then the arachnid on this turn, but then you lose out on some value for the blockadile, and that's a great nickname. I'm going
That
to
was
start
a
using
great
that.
name. I almost spit water out when you said that.
Sorry. Yeah, because it's got a weird name. It's too long.
Yeah.
No,
That guy needs a nickname.
well, shoot, that's exactly why Sunny's content is phenomenal. Once you broke that down, I really was like, yep, well, everything he said. There you go.
You should have gone last, because I would have bumbled it, and then Sonny would have come in and said, "No, this is what you do." You know.
All right,
No, I
guys.
love it when the guests go first. It's like, oh yeah, perfect.
There you go. Agree. Yes.
Batteries wrecked us all last week.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, you go first. Mwahaha.
Actually, you know what though? I think he actually got back to me and said that he didn't think it was lethal. So I have to go back and do
No,
the math.
I did the math right, like immediately too. I didn't want to I didn't want to say anything, but no, it was like 1 point off or whatever. It was very close.
Okay, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. When it starts getting to that point, especially when you're streaming, I'm just like, I don't have enough time to do this math. I'm roping. So, but yeah, all right, sweet, Sunny. Thank you for absolutely killing the what's the play this week. Really do appreciate it. You guys can check out obviously the picture of it on the YouTube video. But great breakdown of the theory of crafting behind it and why you picked the highest value play. So I can see it why you're a master at navigating the Argent Port as well as the Xenon. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for our What's a Play, which leads us into our final segment, which is the constructed corner. So once again, want to give a shout out to IP Long No that came in second place with this home brew. Essentially, I'm sure they used it off of other found decks, but brewed it up with our very own Sakarnan, aka Darthenos, to take this coming in at the 56th seed and make it all the way to the finals, taking second place in this weekend's QCP Summer Challenge in Throne. All right, the deck real quick for you guys. It is 42,000 Shiftstone, and it says does not include campaign cards, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think, oh, there's a card. Okay, so there are some campaign cards in it. Okay, let's break it down real quick. Transpose 4 Annihilates, 1 Backlash, 4 Beseech the Throne, 3 Defile, 4 At Any Cost, 4 Hailstorm, 4 Turn to Seed, 4 Wisdom of the Elders, 4 Forbidden Research, 4 Rindra Infiltrator, 3 Prodigious Sorcery, 1 Savage Incursion, 4 Ekaria First Reaper, 7 Shadow Sigil, 4 Crest of Cunning, 4 Feln Banner, 4 Feln Insignia, 4 Seed of Cunning, 4 Shadow Symbol, and then the market consists of Honor of the Claws, In Cold Blood, Malediction, Rejection, and Vara Vengeance Seeker. Overall, I didn't get to catch all the games, but what I did see play out, the deck felt very mid-rangey, a little on the control side, but maybe it was just because it was seeing a lot of Rakano. It had to be defensive. That being said, I did see it. Obviously, I'm sure the deck wins plenty of times with At Any Cost and Prodigious Sorcery. Digging for that. I wish they had a little more removal is what I felt like. The Malediction sometimes felt very taxed when they did pull it out of the market, but overall the deck was very strong, and just having access to multiple face ages definitely helped in certain situations. Obviously Turn to Seed, and I mean, I still think Ekaria is amazing. Like, she's just so good if they don't have a clean answer to her. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I like the deck. I like the multi-pronged attack plan. I like consistency and redundancy in my decks. Yeah, IP had a good game plan here, and it obviously served him well against the Rakano Menace, which I played over the weekend, and I know you did too. Like a lot of other people did. Like I think we all knew it was kind of busted since they already nerfed or announced all the nerfs before the tournament even started. So I think even Direwolf was like, "Hey, sorry about this busted deck or whatever, but here's a tournament anyway." But I mean, hey,
Oh yeah.
it didn't take it down, right?
And by the way, congratulations and shout out to Ash Acer and our very own John Holio for making a day 2 of the QCP challenge this weekend as well. You guys did great. Very proud of you guys.
So, John Holio top 16 and Jedi, you also made 2. So throw
Yeah,
yourself.
Jedi too. Yeah, good work, team.
I made day 2 for about 10 minutes, so let's not talk about that. All right, so Sunny, sending it over to you. Anything about this deck that stands out to you?
Oh, are you sure you want to ask me that question?
Yeah, please, by all means, like good or
Especially
bad.
now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that this deck could use some serious overhauling. You're playing 4 transpose with the transpose market, and you already have 4 drops that you want to play on curve in the Forbidden Research and Ninja Infiltrator. So you're going to run into some amount of awkwardness there, and you're already playing a deck that's playing Prodigious Sorcery, Yukari, the First Reaper. Those are good cards, but it just means that you're already going to be like kind of bottlenecked in the early turns, and it's going to be difficult to keep up. So I really feel like this deck just doesn't really do enough in the early turns of the game. Like you've got 4 Annihilate and 3 Defile, and that's really about it. Like Besiege the Throne doesn't impact the board at all. Transpose doesn't impact the board at all. Turn to Seed's Priest, like Turn to Seed and Hailstone and Cost, those are fine removal spells, but they cost 3. I really don't like having that many transposes in deck, and as far as Beseech the Throne goes, I think it's worse than Strategize, and the reason for that is because, the only time it's better than Strategize is when you don't hit a power with Strategize, and oh man, I figured this out at some point, but I'm pretty sure that if you have access to Strategize, it's just better than Beseech the Throne. So yeah, that's why I think about the deck. Like I like the original game plan of what it's trying to do with all these damage based spells um and prodigious sorcery, but I like there's some kind of red flags in this deck list that make me really want to change a lot of things to it.
Okay. No, that's I do like the way you broke that down though, as far as why the 4-drop slot you felt is so cluttered and stuff like that, because that is something that I think not everyone looks at when they are essentially deck building, and they end up stacking a certain part in the curve and not realizing that it's making it very clunky versus essentially smooth curve all the way up. How do you feel about Rindra overall Infiltrator, the 2/3 for 4 double primal, quadruple, shadow, and summon? The enemy player discards a card of their choice from their hand, their choice, and +4/+4 in lifesteal if you have played a spell this turn.
I like it, and especially in a deck like this that has a lot of cheap spells and also is is at risk of falling behind early. So I actually really like it. I think that it definitely wants to be paired with Felrock. Like I'm pretty surprised that not to see Felrock in a deck that plays for Forbidden Research and has an Honor of Clause in the market. But I guess I can also understand why like the triple primal could be pretty difficult to get to. But yeah, like that type of effect is better when it stacks, but Rindra is also just kind of a house, I think, in this type of deck.
And can anyone confirm, because now I'm drawing a blank on it, but if you Hailstorm with Rindra in play,
it's fine.
Yeah, it'll get the buff before the Hailstorm damage comes down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to confirm. All right, sweet. Yeah, just wanted to break down. Of course, you guys can catch the link to this deck on Eternal Warcry in the show notes as well. But yeah, I do appreciate that insight very much so, Sunny. I'm more of a tuner, and I have to really run through the deck up the ladder and kind of identify, similar to what you said, but I just can't do it at a glance. So shout out to your expertise and wisdom on it. It normally takes a little bit to be like, I'm never getting this card, or like I really don't try to top deck this card when I'm in trouble, etc., etc.
I'm right there with you, Jedi. It would take me a little bit longer to figure out what Sonny did in like a second there. So
Yeah,
That's very impressive.
yeah. After a while, I'd be like, man, I have like 8 things to do on 4 and only 1 thing to do on 5. Okay. Sonny just looked at the deck and was like, oh, this, and that. I'm like, oh, well, must be nice. That's great.
Well, I mean, people make a lot of fun about my deck building, but every single deck that I've played in a tournament, except for once I played Keith Bailey's deck, has been something of my own creation. So I like to think that I have a reasonable idea of what I'm doing.
And well, the biggest thing too is the fact that you're able to justify all your decision points, right? There's no random card that you're just like, oh, it's just in there just cause, or because everyone thinks this is the best card. You essentially, hey, I like this card because it does this and that in this situation, or I'm not running this card because I don't think it's, it's overrated in this and that. And so because of that, I don't think anyone can really knock your deck building if you have a justification for it versus just kind of jamming, well, I like this card and think it's powerful. So,
people don't care about my justifications. I've heard what people say about my deck building.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you might be surprised what people say, Jedi.
Yeah. Well, like they don't even bother listening.
No.
Fair.
I think some people just want to watch the world burn.
Fair enough. Yeah. All right. I can understand that. I guess I'm always looking at everything through rose-colored glasses sometimes. Where I'm like,
you're far too kind.
Everybody's trash. All right. That leads us to our closing statement. So, Sunyveil, thank you so much for being on the show, man. Absolute blast having you. Time and time again, you've proven why you are such a pillar of this community, and you have the skill set to back it up, and people benefit so much from your Discord, from your streams, from your deck breakdowns and whatnot. Where can people find you at?
Yeah, so I think the best place to find me is twitter.com/Sunyveil. That keeps people up to date with pretty much everything that I'm up to, whether it be music, Eternal, or otherwise. If you're not already a part of the Friends of Eternal Discord and you want to stay connected with specifically like competitive Eternal, I think that's really the niche that Discord has grown into. I think that's the place to be. And we do a podcast every week, FEcast. And if that, I just think that, that's a valuable resource for people that are interested in competitive constructed Eternal.
Awesome. Thank you again for being on the show, man. Absolute delight having you. We definitely need to bring you on more often. And
yeah, hey, I'm happy to be on a podcast where I don't have to do the editing afterward. I love being on a podcast, but oh man, the editing part is just, it can be rough. I mean, I've edited 30 out of the 39 episodes of FEcast or whatever, and I know how much work goes into it, so I always appreciate it when someone else is doing it.
Nice. One day I might train John or Alex to do it, but you
don't have to. I watched Sonny's podcast or Sonny's video on editing podcasts.
Oh, perfect, sweet. Then you can edit this one.
Well, I don't have any equipment or anything, but I learned how to do it. It was very informative.
Oh, it's all free. You just signed yourself up.
I try to do my part by giving you as least edits as possible.
Exactly.
Fair. Yeah, but those are the clips that the people want to hear anyways, so. All right, fair enough. Thank you again, Sonny. Absolute delight. Guys, you can catch the video version of this podcast as well as draft videos and all other tutorials for beginners to intermediates at youtube.com/EternalJourney. And if you'd like to catch the three of us live at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ, where John Julio is throwing up dumpster fires every time I punt. Check it out there every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. Of course, you can join our Discord as well, where we help a lot of people get better at limited and some additional constructed. We do have a team now going on thanks to Dumb Mike deciding to put a bunch of people together and doing brewing and stuff. So definitely check that out there. John, Alex, as always, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. This week, I really do appreciate you guys.
We appreciate you, Jedi. Thanks for having us, as always.
Thanks again, Sonny, for coming on.
My pleasure. Happy to be on whenever I can make it.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys are great. Appreciate you. And until next time, as always, happy gaming.
Bye.
Good luck in your draft queues, everyone.